Tipped in the air and knocked away. KU's got to win it. Blah, big time two-hand slam by Hunter Dickinson.
Kansas is the 2023 WNIT champions.
This is the Jayhawker Podcast, presented by the University of Kansas Health System.
Here we are in the month of February and another Jayhawker Podcast. I am Greg Gurley along with Wayne Simien. The Jayhawker Podcast brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System, Black & Veatch, and Xfinity. Excited to recap a couple of games, kind of good, bad, and ugly. Preview a couple of games we got coming up. We're in that dog days of the grinding gauntlet of the Big 12 schedule as we have another week with a Saturday home game and a Monday road game. Worked out okay. Last week could have been a lot better, and that's why I say good, bad, and ugly. Wayne, good morning to you from lovely Arizona. I'm here. It's not sunny, so don't get mad at me that I'm away. It's way better weather where you're at. I'm looking out at the mountains, and it's 51 degrees, raining. I'm going to the golf tournament tomorrow to cheer on our own Gary Woodland.
Yeah, Waste Management.
Former champ of the Waste Management Open. So good morning and good afternoon to you, buddy. And let's have a good show.
Yeah. All those things.
So last week played a perfect game. The only imperfection in that game to me, which is one of the weirdest Houston game is what I'm referring to, was the fact that we had 18 turnovers in a game we won by 13 against the number 4 team in the country. I don't know what computer software system Chris Tyson enters stuff in. That's got to be a first. I don't know if you could even look that up, whatever artificial intelligence now. Name the last time you beat a top 5 ranked team at home by 13, shooting 69% from the field, and you had 18 turnovers. And the visitors, 3. So whatever. That's why stats are so crazy and you can't really rely on them. But what an atmosphere in Allen Fieldhouse. What a performance in Allen Fieldhouse. Near perfect execution, offensively efficient, defensively dialed in on every single possession, and just took it to a very tough team in the Houston Cougars.
Yeah, and an elite performance, nearly top to bottom, as you mentioned, that one category. Kind of being a little bit of an enigma. I think that if you would have asked you, me, or many of the Jayhawk faithful, if we would have had 18 turnovers and Houston would have only had 3, if you would have asked us if we would win that game, I would be hard pressed to make an argument that we would, which is really, really strange, really unique, albeit probably about 5 of those turnovers were literally like us just giving them the basketball, which was strange. They weren't really forced. We weren't really sped up. There wasn't any type of an enormous amount of pressure that the Cougars put on us. It was just kind of fumbling, careless basketball, which would later, sneak up to bite us a little bit later on in the week. But I felt really, really good going into that game. 3 days prep, the performance that Houston had on the road at Texas, which most of the guys watched and Coach alluded to, I think kind of had us on alert, high alert, being underdogs in our own building. And then, of course, that's one of the things that Coach Self does better than anyone is being able to placate and spin that narrative that, like, hey, we're dogs in our own house. These guys are
nobody respects us. Yeah.
They're more athletic than us. They're going to come and embarrass you in front of your friends and family and on national TV, because actually the lineup for those Saturday games, rivalry-wise, was phenomenal. It was great. That the whole day was great for college basketball. So our guys were ready, and we saw it by the way that they came out with the early fast start, which are very, very important for this team, fast start. But more so than the high shooting percentage, Greg, we were dominant in every toughness category. Like I can't remember missing a blockout. I can't remember not getting a 50-50 ball. I can't remember there wasn't a time where we weren't the first to the ground And that is what makes a Houston and a Kelvin Sampson-led team all the way back to Oklahoma. That's what makes them great. They look so stagnant, speaking of the Houston Cougars, on offense, because their main offense is, hey, let's throw it up on the glass and we're going to go get 60% of our offensive rebounds. That was their offense. And when we neutralized them on the glass, we really rendered their offensive productivity, pretty much useless.
There was a stat, it was probably 8 or 9 minutes into the game. Houston had 1 rebound. To your point, they like to catch it, chase it, shoot it, and 1 rebound. Now, part of that was we either made the shot or we turned it over. So there weren't as many opportunities to rebound. But this game had a box score that was just kind of confusing and weird, but it was all to our benefit because of the way we played. So sorry. But I remember looking at, it was like at the 13-minute mark, I looked at David Lawrence and I go, are these stat monitors right? They only have like 1 rebound. I thought our screen had frozen or something, but it was true. And we just took them out of their game because, as you know well and good, just like I do, Kelvin Sampson recruits guys to his system, which is hit you, bang you, box you out, chase you, and not always very offensively gifted. But I think this year they're way more offensively gifted than they've been in the past. But we completely took them out of their game.
Yeah, to that offensive gifting, really neutralized Shed. We knew that Cryer, as they had a nice little run there in the second half to kind of maybe tighten the collar up a little bit.
One guy.
Yeah. And I think we expected that, especially someone that is elite from scoring behind the 3-point arc as LJ Cryer is. And so, for the most part, played nearly a perfect game. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the crowd and the atmosphere was absolutely phenomenal. Fieldhouse folks showed up. There's a reason why we're 12-0 at home. And it was in large part to that energy and buzz that the Jayhawk faithful provided.
I got several phone calls from my donors. You and I deal with all of our donors, but on the higher end, it's very expensive to come down Fieldhouse to have good seats. And it was so refreshing that I got calls from people that were like, you know what? Games like that makes it all worth it. They're paying a lot of money to have the seats that they have, and being able to bring their kids, grandkids to the game and have that atmosphere is what makes it all worth it for our players, for our coaches, for our donors, for our visiting fans and teams like that. You mentioned it too, that the Saturday lineup of games was crazy, and it all culminated with Duke and North Carolina College Gameday, which College Gameday will be in Lawrence this weekend, which will be a great atmosphere as always. So I thought UConn was the best I've seen atmosphere-wise until last Saturday, and it was crazy. And the other thing I'll add, we're going to be in phase 2 of the Allen Fieldhouse renovations, and our scoreboard and our speaker system, and there's going to be some new video boards.
It's getting better.
Manufactured noise from Rock Chalk Video is going to be even greater come next season. And so I know the Houston fans that were there for the first time are like, how can it get any louder? It's going to get louder.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I have pretty big expectations for the environment this Saturday with game day being in the house. And, part of it is you give the crowd a reason to get frenzied by the way that you play. Okay. I don't necessarily remember there being a ton of like highlight driven, exciting plays, meaning ESPN top 10. KJ had a few electrifying blocks, but but it's just the way that we played. Like when we play hard and tough, and when we play like it means more to us than it means to the other team, that's what fans and donors and people want to get behind. Is the try hard. Look, occasionally, you'll get the timely, 3 by Johnny Furphy or the big dunk from KJ, and those are great. But to have and generate that consistent type of atmosphere, it starts with those toughness categories, and that's something that those guys did a great job of on Saturday. And it's something that, guess what? You need to have those on the road as well. We were certainly lacking in that category on Monday night, and unfortunately, we paid the price for it.
Yeah, as I started off saying, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the good and the great and all that was Saturday. The bad and the ugly was Monday, and that has become an unfortunate trend for us during the Big 12 season, is that we've struggled on the road against teams that in normal times we would win those type of games, and we just haven't. We haven't been able to just make that big play or get that big stop, and it happened again on Monday. So as we put a bow on Saturday, atmosphere, unbelievable. Big win against a top 5 opponent. We're a dog. Kelvin Sampson came out and said he was mad at Vegas for making Houston the favorite. And then you move
Kelvin
on.
Sampson, who remains winless in the field house, mind you. A great coach. It's not a shot. A great coach. It's more of an affirmation to the environment and what we can do in Allen Fieldhouse, because we have a great coach who has yet to win a game there.
Yeah, and he is a great coach. And I was watching him last night. You see him, they're up 21, I think, and he got kicked out of the game on a call that should have been called. I watched the replay. I was like, oh, my God, that guy just elbowed him right in the back, and he went. He got
his money's worth out of that ejection. I'm not sure Scott Drew did earlier on Saturday with his ejection. Kelvin certainly got all his worth of that, which I appreciate.
Speaking of that, what a weird game. You know, after we got done with our game, you're watching the other ones, and Baylor, Iowa State was one of the closet really good games throughout the year, and it was marred by an ejection of Scott Drew on a very calm, like literally a step over the coach's box, which you and I watch basketball all the time. You don't ever see that. Now, I did hear that the Big 12 sent out a memo. I don't know if this is true, that they're trying to put an emphasis on staying in the coaching box. So sometimes when you put the emphasis out there, the officials, it gets grained in their head, and they're like, I'm going to call 3 seconds, or I'm going to call it charge more. But I can't believe they teed them up for that. I mean, me and you don't care what happens in that game, but man, if the shoe was on the other foot and Bill got kicked out because of stepping over the coach's box line, it's ridiculous. So I was really surprised at that. And if I'm a Baylor fan, I'm really glad that you won that game, because if you lose a 1-point game and something like that, and 2 of the points were from a technical because of a coaching box, I would have been furious.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Coach responds to that, as he's known to be animated on the sideline, and certainly hasn't always adhered by coaching box regulations, whatever those are, especially in a fiery game like we're going to have on Saturday.
So as we move on to Manhattan, a couple nights ago, Dylan's Sunflower Showdown, frustrating game because of the way we played on Saturday. We're like, okay, all right, we're going to go to Manhattan. K-State's lost 4 in a row. All my K-State buddies that I was talking to up there, they're like, yeah, we're reeling. You guys are the best, and I'm like, well, it's always going to be difficult in Manhattan. And it was. And I wouldn't even say K-State's a great defensive team, but they played really well defensively, took us out of a lot of our stuff, and nothing was easy. And then when it's not easy, you got to dig down, and you got to make free throws, and you got to make the big plays, make the big stops. And we just didn't. And yeah, there was a part of the second half that the fouls took over. And when K-State was struggling offensively, they made 7 straight free throws, and that got them and kept them in a game that we could have put away. And say what you want to say, it is what it is. You don't get the calls. You do get the calls, whatever. Thought we got a bad whistle. It was affirmed and I watched it, but hey, that is what it is. And you got to play through it. We had every opportunity in overtime to win that game, and we just didn't. And that's another bogey, as I make a, golf reference again. West Virginia was a bogey on hole number 2. On number 5, we had a bogey in Morgantown, West Virginia. And, here we did it again. And now we got to start making birdies. And that's number one, defending our home court on Saturday against Baylor with another electric atmosphere against a top 25 team that can easily come into Allen Fieldhouse and win. Then 48 hours later, we go to Lubbock, Texas, where they're kind of reeling. They were at the top, then they dropped back-to-back games at home against Cincinnati, and then last night lose to Baylor at Baylor, which is another place we're going to go later in the year as our schedule gets even tougher. So that's what amplified the big Monday matchup in Manhattan and the loss because of what we have to come.
I'm sick. I'm sick. I just wanted to be mad all day yesterday. I had, friends and family and former players hit me up. Oh, bounce back, game day, whatever. That was just one of those days where I wanted to be mad. I didn't want any reasons. I didn't want to have to answer any questions. I didn't want any consoling. I just wanted to be mad. And this is why. Look, when you think
I'm always there to console you. If you need a shoulder to cry on.
Nah, you were on the road. I was actually glad that you were out of town because I didn't want any chumminess or buddiness. And the reason why it was difficult, look, we think back to last year, we lose in overtime in Manhattan, but they had two real dudes go off. Moel, Keontae Johnson, real dudes step up, big boy basketball going off on their home court. And we just couldn't get it done. All right. Hey, that's fine. I'm not convinced that that's a great Kansas State team. I'm not convinced even their best players had their best game. And that's why I just felt difficult to lose that way. For every category, that we dominated against Houston, we let those categories slide on the road in Manhattan. And you can't do that expecting to win a rivalry game on the road. And, it's helpful to be able to think, hey, when the shots aren't falling and we took a ton of contested twos and had a hard time throwing the ball in the Hunter, it's like, what are you going to hang your hat on when you're finding a difficult time to score? And, historically, Coach Self has been able to develop teams and guys to be able to do that. And, you could talk about, the legs and the tiredness, when it comes to that difficult Saturday, Monday turnaround, which is a real thing, except when it's a rivalry game. Like, I'm not really sure that can be a factor, when it's a rivalry game, if it really means as much to you as it should. And so,
but to that point, though, I always say this: the Saturday Mondays are a thing, but they're the same thing for our opponent. And they had the exact, little different scenario. They were on the road and then home, vice versa. But I always look at it, yes, tired legs, but you got to think that the other team's doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, sure. And though we haven't gotten a significant amount of production off of our bench, and I know that's been a narrative that's been described and discussed for the duration of the season, they struggled. They really
no other way to put it. Yeah.
They hurt us. And so, so when you add that factor into it, when, this may be unlike some other teams that have a little bit more, maybe not even depth at that position, but when they're in the game and they hold serve, basically while you can work through some foul trouble or work through some fatigue and get your guys back out there. That was something that was a big miss for us. And it can't be a miss. It's difficult now as you're thinking about the conference race, which is so interesting, Greg, because this time last week, guess what? We were the middle of the pack of the Big 12. One Saturday, one major win, and everyone else loses. And then the reshuffling of the deck, and next thing you know, we're tied for first, right? And so I'm sure it's going to be kind of a seesaw effect throughout the duration. The difficult thing now is it kind of feels like our destiny isn't in our own hands anymore. Like, even if we win, hold serve at home and split on the road, we're probably going to need some help from some other teams. And that's just probably a little bit more of a feeling that we're not used to, especially this early in February.
No question. We're going to need some help, but the other team's got to go through what we're going through too. Would you have picked Cincinnati winning in Lubbock? No. I don't think anybody out of the state of Ohio had them beating Texas Tech and Lubbock. So there's going to be more of that. There's going to be a lot more of that. And we're going to be able to scoreboard watch a little bit. But
so with that said, forecast some more. And I think maybe at the start of the conference season, and maybe even Fran talked about this on our last episode, 4 to win outright, 5 to tie. Speaking of losses, at this juncture, do you think those numbers still hold true, or do we need to slide that loss column up a little bit and maybe make it 5 gets hit the title outright and 6 get the share? Or I mean, I think that's a fair question.
No, I think at this point, if you look at the standings, 5 wins it. 13 and 5 wins it. 12 and 6 also might tie it. So we'll continue to update it. You know, back to the game itself. You know, as you're watching it, and I'm right there 5 feet from the floor. There was a play. You know, we talk about tired legs and all that, and everybody goes to the overtime when Kevin missed a front end of a 1-and-1, and Bill went nuts. You know, we were talking about Scott Drew, the coaching box. I mean, Bill was on the court, out of the coach's box, doing everything that Scott Drew didn't, and was complaining because 2 of their guys, both feet were in the lane as Kevin went like this. And when Bill, you know, missed it and they got the rebound and we fouled, but when Bill asked the officials, they looked at him like he was speaking German. They didn't even know what and they're like, this is exactly what, like, that was a violation ×2, and Kevin would have got another free throw. And that's why, to Bill's defense, he went nuts and the entire coaching staff went nuts, because it was, I mean, you can't just choose to pick when you enforce rules, but they said, I didn't see it. I was like, how do you, that was just the frustrating part. They go on, they made their free throws, we didn't. We lose the game, we move on. But that's, if you listen to my my interview with Bill post game, it was referenced, and that definitely stuck in the craw. Now the good thing is we can get right back healthy again on Saturday, and we're going to get K-State in our building for senior night, which we have a ridiculous record on senior night. So it'll be fun to get back in the win column, but still
I like the prep, you know, Monday, Saturday. I like the multiple days of prep. I like the multiple days at rest, but coming off a rivalry loss, there's something about it that just stings a little bit longer, you know, that lingers deep into the week, and hopefully those guys will use that as a motivating factor. Hey, how about you give the listeners and I a little bit of perspective of what is it like when you have to go into the locker room after a tough loss like that? Look, you and I have talked about the banter and the happy-go-lucky kind of mood it is sometimes when you go in to interview coach after games, and, you know, Curtis Townsend, the other assistants are razzing you and egging you on and making faces and things like that as you're trying to keep a straight face and be a professional after a win when the locker room's feeling good. Oh, I kind of shudder, and it feels a little cold when I think about you having to walk into the locker room to think the right questions to ask, where you want to be, you know, a real journalist, so to speak, and to be able to get real authentic and meaningful answers, but you don't want to step on a landmine when you get blunt. What is that like? Help us understand what that's like.
It's a great question, and we talk about it a lot, and you know how a locker room is, but then when you put yourself into that journalist box, it is fun. When we
use air quotes for journalists for you and I.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Obviously, I'm not a trained journalist, business degree from the University of Kansas, but you know, it's my 13th or 14th year doing these interviews, and Bill and I obviously have a very good relationship, known each other for 30 plus years, but when you win, oh, it's great. Even sometimes when you do win, he's mad because we didn't win by enough or he didn't like something. But a loss, you know, everyone on a win, everyone's kind of jealous of me. Oh, you get to go in the locker room. It's fun. Hey, tell me about the game, blah, blah, blah. That there's sometimes in those games that you know you're going to lose, and you're down 10 with 30 seconds. I'll look at Brian and be like, you want to go in there and do this interview? And he's like, no, I don't. But it is, you know, you go in there and just to kind of set the scene, you got a coach's locker room, and then you got a player's locker room. So the coaches, I wait until the coaches walk into the player locker room to go address the team, I go into the coach's locker room and I sit there and I write out a few questions, or at least my monologue, so to speak. And, I'm sitting there by myself. I got no interaction with anybody. And I'm like, oh God, what's he going to be like? Is he going to, and you're usually bordering a wall to the player locker room. So you can kind of hear the volume of his talk with the team and some of the language. So you get a little bit of an idea. But then you're like, oh boy, I better change that, or I better not ask about that, because I do get feedback from fans sometimes. They're like, why didn't you ask him about, this, like harder hitting questions? And I'm like, well, to your point, I'm sitting there and Norm, KT, Jeremy, Brennan, Brady, Q, we're always in a very, very small space. So it's like we're in like a walk-in closet, so to speak. It's not really a locker room. So they're all looking at you like, what are you going to say, Gurley? Make sure it's good. Make sure you don't stumble. And hard questions. I don't know. Should I do it? Probably. Do I want the answers that I'm searching for? Maybe not. And then the thing that fans don't have to deal with is the aftermath. When I click the button to end it, they'll be like, what kind of blankety blank question was that? And I'll be like, well, this guy in Iola wanted to know. And I'm like, so.
You say the average fan doesn't have to deal with that. The average media member doesn't have to deal with that, right? They're 50 feet away, coaches behind the table. They're lobbing questions from a safe distance and have zero interaction or engagement with him afterwards. Where man, you're in the ring of fire for sure. But
this isn't feel sorry for Greg time. I'm just giving you an answer to your question, which was a great question, to kind of get the landscape of how it all works. And it's not enjoyable. And you sit there and it's usually quiet. Like everyone's just kind of like, what do we do? How do we lose that? God, we had every opportunity. And then I kind of look at him, I'm like, all right, you ready? And sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't. And I take my phone out and I, ready? And then, I go tell everyone else to be quiet. And it is what it is. It's I think it's great content. People love it. Home, away, whatever. They get in their car, they're driving home. They love hearing from the coach 10 minutes after the final buzzer. So it's good. It's great content, I think. I welcome all of your comments. Please email me.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Don't say that.
No, you get I'd love to show you some of the stuff. I'll show you, maybe not the public, but it is funny what people look at, perception versus reality. It is what it is. But I'm unbelievably fortunate to, number one, have this job. I mean, it's a privilege to be able to call the games of my favorite place I played, and then be able to work with a staff and a head coach that I've never worked anywhere else, so I don't know, but I can't imagine anybody as personable and easy, because a lot of times I'm kind of more of a conversationally interviewer, like where it's not even like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? It's more like I kind of recap something, because he's so good at just rambling. And rambling sounds like a bad word, but he'll kind of recap it too, even off of a statement as opposed to a question.
Yeah. Hey, it's a thankless job. Thanks for lobbing up the questions and getting the heck
It's
out
not
of the
a
way.
thankless job. It's a thankful job.
Yeah. And letting coach do his thing. And hey, speaking of coaches and coaches that we're really excited about, we had a great opportunity to interview and to spend some time with our new head women's soccer coach, Coach Nate Lee, in an interview that we recorded a little bit earlier, and we're going to tack on to the end of this. Man, how excited are we, not just about the announcement in the Kansas City that we're going to get to host 2 World Cup matches, but now to be able to have a head coach at our soccer program that's willing to capitalize off the momentum of hosting a World Cup, having one of the best facilities in the Big 12, being in one of the top recruiting bases for women's soccer in the country, and he gets a chance to get into all that And so I really enjoyed our time and interview with him, and I'm sure our listeners will as well.
Yeah, and I thought it was great. And as you'll listen, I thought, we talked about soccer in Kansas City from a guy who was outside of the Kansas City area that talked about how good Kansas City as a region producing really, really good soccer programs. And he looked at that as a bonus. It's like, all right, I'm coming to an area that's, 30 minutes down the road where I can go get girls to come play at Kansas and take us to the next level. So a very enjoyable interview with Nate Lee. And I'll correct you on one thing. I think we're getting 6 World Cup games, 1 quarterfinal, another one, and then like a bunch of group play. 6 World Cup. Oh yeah,
for the group of play. Yeah, I was thinking the group of play as
one. Think about that as a Kansas Cityan, and you are too. What a cool atmosphere. They say that the soccer people that go to these World Cups, that one is like Super Bowl-esque economic impact of your region. We're getting 6, not to mention campsites. And what they call a campsite is like, let's just say Argentina. They will utilize Kansas City. That's a hypothetical. It's not going to be Argentina, but whoever it is, pick a country. And they bring like 20,000 people. So hotels, restaurants, gas station, everything. They just take over for like 6 weeks. And then they go to KCI and they fly to wherever their team's games are. So we're going to have that. We're going to have 6 games. And for Nate to capitalize on that, being the backyard program, will be huge. But what a great guy, great staff that he's brought, and a very enjoyable interview coming up after the break. But to put a bow on Kansas basketball and everything that's going on right now, Saturday, the Baylor Bears are in town. College Gameday will be here. Jay Williams, Seth Greenberg, Jay Billis, Dan Schulman will be calling the game. Always fun to show off Allen Fieldhouse and its iconic presence. And, they were just in the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill. I assume they'll go to Cameron Indoor for that next installment of UNC Duke. But, our students show up in a big way to show off what we have. And it's just a good 3-hour commercial for the University of Kansas. We've seen it with College Gameday at football, when we had that 2 years ago, and what it meant to, our university. And it's a commercial. Our numbers show that our enrollment goes up when this is a cool place to come to as a fan, as a player, as whatever. And largest freshman class in our history right now. There's no denying that it has to do with success in football, success in basketball, and being the place to be. So show up on Saturday. Wayne, you'll probably be up there with all your kids. It's just a fun atmosphere. He's speechless.
I'm anticipatory. I'm excited.
So Baylor on Saturday. Then we hop on a plane, which they moved our flight time up a little bit, I think, so we can land in Lubbock around 4:00, get settled, and watch our Kansas City Chiefs win another Super Bowl. I'm going to the one city in America outside of Kansas City, or outside of the state of Kansas or Missouri, where there's going to be all Chiefs fan. That's Lubbock, Texas. So wearing our red, it's going to be like being home because, Patrick Mahomes, Texas Tech, it's actually going to be kind of fun. I wish I was at my guy's house that I always go to, Jason Gudenkauf, to watch the games, but I'll be in Lubbock with strangers that will have the same goals, and that's for the Chiefs to win another Super Bowl. Where are you going to watch it?
I'll be at the same place where we watched it last year. I've got a good friend named John Wright. He's actually a K-State grad, a former K-State football player. But they've got 4 boys, indoor basketball court, theater room, all the goodies. So I will bring my whole crew, drop them off over there, and make some chili and some nachos, and enjoy the game there.
Where did you watch it last year?
At his house.
Perfect. Okay,
yep.
That was the only right answer.
Yep.
Because that's the same way with me. I'm a little upset that I'm going to be out of town because I've watched the previous 2 Super Bowls at another. He's actually a K-State guy too, Jason Gudenkauf. But I watched it at his house. I'm not going to be there, but I'm going to wear the same hoodie that I've always worn.
Run it back, everything. Run it back. Same menu, same seats. Run all that back.
I know it's the Jayhawker podcast, but what the Chiefs have done has been so much fun as a lifer, as an absolute lifer Chiefs fan. I talk to my kids about this. I'm like, you guys have no idea how fortunate you are as Jayhawk fans and Chiefs fans and Royals. It's been an amazing lifetime for my 23 and 20-year-old daughters. So they're very spoiled, but I'm glad they are. So Saturday, Baylor Bears. Monday, Texas Tech. We got a chance to get healthy. And you and I next Wednesday when we film another Jayhawker podcast will be like, the Manhattan loss is behind us. We just won 2 straight. All is well in the world. We got another Super Bowl champ, back-to-back Kansas basketball wins. And let's just hope that happens. Nate Lee coming up next, Jayhawker Podcast, brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System, Black & Veatch, and Xfinity. Rock Chalk.
In order for small businesses to thrive, they need to be smart, efficient, savvy, staying ahead of the market at every turn, finding ways to do more with less, and taking advantage of every opportunity that comes their way. That's why Comcast Business is introducing the Small Business Bonus. For a limited time, you can get up to a $1,000 prepaid card when you switch to Comcast Business, the company with the largest, fastest, reliable network. So if you're a small business owner, don't wait. Call or go online to learn about the $1,000 bonus today.
Give your business a head start in 2024. Get started with fast speeds and advanced security for $49.99 a month for 12 months with a 2-year agreement. Call or go online to switch today. Ends 2/21/24. Restrictions apply. New customers only with 50 megabits per second internet and security edge. EcoBill and autopay required. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. Prepaid card offer requires premium internet.
Our brand new soccer coach, Nate Lee, is joining us. This is the Jayhawker Podcast, brought to you by the University of Kansas Health System, Xfinity, and Black & Veatch. Coach, welcome to Lawrence. Welcome to the podcast. So good to have you.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, it's great to be here. Great to be in Lawrence.
Talk a little bit about yourself. Give everybody kind of your background. Come to us from Xavier and been around the Midwest, Cleveland, Ohio, but first time here in Kansas. So how's the welcoming been? Facilities, just the whole shooting match.
Yeah, I've been coaching now for about 15 years, and all 15 of those were in Southwest Ohio. So 4 years at Miami, Ohio, 4 years at University of Cincinnati, and about 7 over at Xavier. And I was born and raised in Ohio. My wife was born and raised in Ohio. Kids were born and raised in Ohio. And so this trip to Kansas has been new. It's been exciting. One thing I've noticed right away is the welcoming nature of the people of Kansas, the people of Lawrence. I was telling Wayne on the way over here, I would have been a few minutes earlier, but every time I walked by a door in the hallway, someone was saying hello, wanting to know how the transition was going. So that is one thing that me and my family felt from day one are the people.
Well, this guy right here, Wayne Simien, was a big proponent of getting you here on the hiring committee, and so he knows a lot about you. But tell everyone else about your family, kids.
3 kids, 7, 9, 11 years old, so 2nd, 4th, 6th grade. The oldest one is Michael, and he just entered a Rubik's Cube competition, and then had he's in chess club, and he does
How fast can he do it?
He said, yeah, I know the answer to this one.
Let's hear it.
He just set his PR on a 3x3, which is a standard cube, in just under 20 seconds. His average is under 30. He was very proud. We have a video of it. 20 seconds. Yeah, 20 seconds.
We might want to get this video. We could play 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I'll get it to you. Grace is the middle. She is in the middle of basketball season. She plays soccer. You could tell she's the girl of our family. And Josh is our young one. He's a little guy, and he's always hanging around the older boys and doesn't realize he's like a foot smaller than everyone. But yeah, he tries to keep up, and he loves his sports too, and they're all excited to come.
Love it.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about your coaching journey, obviously coming from Xavier, which, the Big East time people can look at and say, hey, it's not in the Power 5 traditional conference, but a very tradition-rich and competitive soccer environment. Talk to us a little bit about your success there at Xavier, but then also your overall soccer journey, which led you to wanting to become a head coach.
Sure. The Big East, people listening to this probably have respect for that conference in basketball. I think right now maybe ranked the second behind Big 12. And I think it was pretty similar on the soccer side. The Big 12 and the Big East actually tended to be ranked right next to each other year over year. So one year the Big East was ahead, one year the Big 12 was. I do think the Big 12's a deeper conference, a little bit more challenging top to bottom, and so that's going to be a new mountain to try to climb. But I don't think that the change in level is going to be that extreme. While we were at Xavier, we were able to win 4 championships, 3 regular season, 1 tournament. We went to 4 NCAA tournaments. We were able to advance twice. We had a pretty strong team there at the end. And one stat I'm proud of is we hadn't lost a conference game in 27 games, which is almost 3 full conference seasons. So that team that we left behind and that's going to be successful going forward was a real tough team and something we were proud of. I was fortunate enough to be parts of championship teams as an assistant coach. So at University of Cincinnati, we won the American Athletic Conference Championship in our 3rd year there in 2015. When I was at Miami University, we won the MAC Championship in our 4th year there in 2012. We won the double, the regular season and the tournament, and we knocked off Tennessee in the NCAA tournament. And so each program I've been part of, fortunate enough to have won a conference championship, compete in the NCAA tournament, and it's something we're hoping to do sooner than later here at KU.
Yeah, and I love that that's the expectation. You've had championship pedigree at each step along the way in your coaching career, and the expectation here at Kansas for that hasn't changed, right? You're wanting and coming in not to just be competitive, not just to occasionally make the NCAA tournament, but to compete for conference and national championships. That's
the hope, and we hope to be building on a really strong and proud legacy that Coach Francis and the coaches before him built. I've said this before, but I'll make this like proclamation. I know how good KU soccer can be and was because Kansas beat Xavier in the 2019 second round of the NCAA tournament. And so I was on the losing end of that one. And Katie McClure, who I believe might have been All-American here, scored a hat trick against us. So we could have done a better job defending her. But yeah, that is, I've said it as far as all the Ohio roots that we had for us to make this big leap and for my wife Emily to sign off on a new opportunity where she's leaving her family. We're only going to do it if we think we can compete at the highest level, and we'd rather not wait for that to happen 3, 5, 10 years down the road. We're already at work with the team, and when we talk to them, it's hard to talk about expectations because we don't know, right? We don't know exactly what we have. We don't know what's fair as far as tangible results. But as we're putting this 2024 fall schedule together and making some choices, I told the team in our meeting last week, we put a team like Brown on the schedule, and it looks like we're going to add Gonzaga on the schedule. And those are 2 women's soccer NCAA tournament teams that the reason we're adding them is that we think we can compete and try to win those games. And if we do, that will be on our resume for the NCAA tournament. So that's the hope.
You know, in this day and age of transfer portal and all this stuff going on, facilities are a big draw. So talk about what drew you to Kansas, how nice our facilities are out at Rock Chalk Park, and maybe compare and contrast what you had at Xavier compared to here.
Right, and what I say, I don't want it to be a knock on Xavier. I loved my time there. I really respect the people I worked with. We made the best of our facilities, and we used it as a home field advantage, and so it's not a knock on a place like Xavier, but it is a reason why one of the factors of making this change and one of the factors of potentially having a higher ceiling. I came from a place where we shared our facility with men's soccer and lacrosse, and this was the game and practice facility for all 3 of those teams, and so essentially kind of needs 6 segments to try to schedule. The field was turf the field was narrow, and so it had 70 yards of width at best, which in some ways you could use to your advantage, but in some ways was limiting from a tactical kind of point of view. And so if we juxtapose that against Rock Chalk, we have a perfect, essentially, grass pitch that's full size, 120 by 80, that we don't share with anyone, and that's sacred for game day. And so when you roll up to Rock Chalk and you see the stature of it, and you walk out of a proper tunnel, that's what you want in soccer. I hope the players get butterflies kind of coming out of that tunnel, because I get it talking about it. And then, that's a bit of drive off campus, but for the student athlete's daily life, they walk out of their dorms straight into the locker room, which this building has the athletic training room, it has the strength and conditioning, and you walk out the doors and you're on your training field, which, from what I've been told, the surface matches that of the game facility, and we have plenty of room out there. And so it shows up in certain ways where our players, the ones that have ambitions for being all-conference, all-American, that might want to be pros or just want to be able to contribute to winning here, they can go out with a coach, they can go out on their own, get extra work, and those were things that were a much bigger challenge beforehand.
So you mentioned a little bit about the players, and in the hiring process, you came on board just before Christmas break as the NCAA tournament wrapped up. The players got a chance to hear and meet from you, and then they went home, and then they came back. In that time, you assembled your staff, and you've recently had a couple moments to be able to be on the pitch with them in a training scenario. So tell us what that transition has been like, and what are your early impressions? And I know it's early,
Sure.
but what are your early impressions of the roster you have?
So as you said, I was hired, came out here the next day, and met the team in a 1-hour meeting, and it was awkward in all the right ways, because we're all just getting to know each other, and we're all excited, and we're trying to figure out how to express that, because you really can express that when you work with each other daily. But when it's that first introduction, you're just trying to make a good impression, create some excitement, try to set a few expectations, and then they go home for break. And so the first thing we asked them when they went home on break and no one's watching them, and 4, 5, 6 weeks on their own, is to come back fit and ready to go. And I'll give a great shout out to the existing team, to Allie and Allison, our athletic trainers, to Taylor, our strength coach, that a program was put in place. The players seemed to follow it. So then on day one, when we go out to training the first day, the team looked ready, and we didn't have to take a long time to acclimate. We could jump right into it. And that's my coaching style, is let's not take half of practice to warm up into what we're really trying to get to. Let's jump in and make our time worth it. And so we're on week 3. We've been out on the field 3 times. We have another one coming up later this week. We've had 2 film sessions. They've had 5 or 6 strength and conditioning sessions. Early impressions, the players are ready to work. They're ready to listen and try to implement the new coaching points. We're still at that point where we are asking them to do new things, and that can be paralyzing. And so and then when you try to put those new things together, it could look disjointed. And so we're just asking for their patience and trust that keep doing these things, and day by day, it's going to be more natural to you individually. And then we as a team will flow and have coherence a lot more. And we already see that, like from day 1 to day 3, just the natural training habits that we're asking for. And it doesn't mean ours are right and anyone else's was wrong. It's just this new era of KU soccer will have certain standards. You could already see them adhering to those standards more naturally, and how we're trying to put those pieces together over time.
So coming from Ohio, and you were in this game for a long, long time, what were your perceptions of Kansas City? Kansas City and the surrounding area soccer programs. You got Sporting KC, you got the KC Current, which has just taken over, built the only women-only professional sports stadium. It's going to open here in a month or so. What did you view Kansas City as from afar? And now that you're here, how much will you try to get into Kansas City and get a lot of your players from that region?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of why I thought this was the right job for me in my career is we hope we're good coaches, but one of the things that make coaches look really smart is having really good players and recruiting to the best of your ability. And I think and thought that Kansas City was one of the best hubs in the country for recruiting. And we tried, right? So at my previous schools, we tried to recruit Kansas City, and we had a player committed or two, but it's in Big 12 country or it's closer to SEC country. And to convince someone to come 8, 9, 10 hours away to a school that they probably hadn't heard of, we just didn't have a lot of luck. But we knew how strong the market was. Cincinnati is a strong soccer market. St. Louis, Kansas City, those are 3 of the major ones in the Midwest. And so that will be home base for us. And so we've already been to Kansas City multiple times. We have another one of our coaches going tonight. I'm going tomorrow. We are going. I told some of those coaches, like, tell me when you're sick of us, because we're going to be around, and we're going to try to recruit your best players, the ones that have been leaving town. It's our job to try to keep them home. And so we'll recruit all over the country and try to find difference makers wherever they may live, but we're gonna start here at home.
Yeah, and as you talked about in that recruiting process, clearly you're referring to your coaching staff. And so brag a little bit about them. You brought one of them from Xavier with you, and then you were able to go out and to recruit some other great coaches for some other programs who you had a relationship with to join you in this new journey here at Kansas. So tell us about your staff.
I can't overstate how excited I am about this staff. I was fortunate enough where got the first piece in place right away when Tyler decided to come from Xavier. So Tyler was recently promoted to associate head coach at Xavier, and he started off with us as a volunteer. And so he worked his way up really quickly because he's really, really good. And he's proficient in lots of different areas, whether it's in the office or on the field. But I think the first thing that drew me to him was he's a relentless recruiter. He loves it. He dreams it, I think, and he comes every single day ready to try to add to our talent base. And he dropped out of 2 potential head coaching searches, just decided to come to Kansas with us right away. Wow. And was on that plane day one with his wife, Kendall, who is from down in Alabama. They just got married. This is not her region of the country that she's used to, and she signed off on it because of how passionate he is about the opportunity and how supportive she is of his career. And then since Tyler, we added Tiffany Hansen as an associate head coach, and she was always my first choice. And all the pieces of the rest of the puzzle for the staff had to wait to see if we got Tiffany. We are kind of I'm a little bit older than her, but we're in sort of the same generation that we were young coaches coming up at the same time. She was at Dayton when I was at Miami, Ohio, which are less than an hour away. We recruited the same players. We kept on being at the same fields. They won just as many of those battles as we did, so I knew that she had a great eye and that she was part of a great recruiting staff. After she left Dayton, she went to University of Michigan for 7 years and was part of huge success there, including, I think, her final year they went to the Elite Eight, and they had nationally ranked recruiting classes while she was the recruiting coordinator. LSU came knocking and I think recruited her to come to LSU, and she spent the last 2 years there, different part of the country, a little bit kind of closer when it comes to us for Texas and some of those areas. And she was recruiting coordinator at LSU. And so for us to bring her recruiting experience is huge for our staff. She's a great, great person, and that's what originally connected us. And then as a goalkeeper coach, because that's her role on our staff, she's absolutely one of the best in the country. And I think a little bit of proof of that is she spent last week with the under-20 national team as their goalkeeper coach. Yeah. Wow. She's about to go to Columbia with the under-20s. And before that, she was going to be with the U16. So she's literally being asked by the national team staff to train and coach the best goalkeepers the country has. The third coach on the staff, assistant coach, is Daniel Baker. And Daniel, his story isn't that dissimilar to Tyler's, that he started off as a volunteer, was willing to do all the non-glamorous, dirty work, was a huge value add for us at Xavier in the 2022 season when We advanced in the NCAA tournament. He was part of that staff. I think part of my responsibility as a head coach is helping the assistants move on with their careers if they're ready and if that's what they choose to. And he moved on from Xavier to Penn State and was full-time with Penn State. That was his first time full-time coaching gig with Penn State, and they finished the season maybe number 1 in the RPI. I think they went to the Final 8. They're one of the perennial teams in the country, and so Daniel being willing to leave Penn State for a very similar role here at Kansas, I'm appreciative, and I think he'll add a ton of value. He relates incredibly well to the players. He's the old soul, even though he's the youngest player on staff. He's a great counterbalance to a lot of quirks of my personality. And then we rounded off the staff with Sean Soderling as the director of ops. And again, like Sean left a head coaching position. And Sean is married with 2 kids and has decided to sort of uproot his life and take this gamble to come on at the director of ops role from a head coaching position. And Sean is full of energy and charisma. He's creative. He's great with graphics. And so he can, I think, very much serve us from a recruiting perspective behind the scenes when recruits get on campus. And yeah, he has the biggest social media following of the 5 of us, and he's already kind of hitting that social media pretty hard. So just feel incredibly blessed about the staff.
Oh, that's great to hear that. You know, we're around these coaches and these programs pretty regularly. And, of course, you got guys like Bill and Lance and Fitz that get, the head of the ship and the limelight. But we all know that there is an awesome core of talented and hardworking assistants that are helping to support that program. And it sounds like you've assembled something very, very similar.
I think so. Our charge is that we will serve our student athletes, act in their best interest, and outwork any staff out there. And that's at least what we're asking of each other, that we're going to be recruiting machines as much as we can, that we can bring the best talent here to Lawrence, and we can do it in the right way.
Here we are, basically first part of February. Take me through the rest of the spring, the summer, leading into next year, recruiting-wise, what the spring will be like and summer.
So team-wise, we're in a phase of 8 hours where we're allowed to be with the student athletes, countable hours of 8 a week. We have a few more of those weeks, and then we'll transition to the 20, and where that's the majority of the rest of the spring. Up until spring break, we'll just be training and kind of gearing up. And then after spring break, we're allowed to play 5 spring games, which are exhibitions, and we play essentially 1 a week after spring break. 4 of those, unfortunately, are going to be on the road, but that'll be a great way for us to get to know each other. You bond a little bit more when you're on the bus, in the hotel, at dinner, and then we'll play at Rock Chalk Park on April 21st. We're playing a local team, Washburn, who is the runner-up, Division II national runner-up, so a very good team, and it's nice playing a local team. And then outside of that, we're going to be recruiting anywhere, everywhere. On my calendar, every single weekend from here until May, I will be recruiting or sneaking back to Cincinnati for a weekend because my family's still there. But I have this first 6 weeks on the job. I'll be out recruiting, and then I'll be able to sneak back to Cincinnati at the end of February, I believe. Yeah.
Well, something that's unique about your background is that you didn't start out in the coaching world, but you actually spent a significant time in the corporate world. Most folks finish their playing career, hop right into coaching, and then stay in it and kind of climb the ladder. How had your experience in the corporate world prepared you in a unique way for your role now and basically running your own company or running an organization that is a team?
Yeah, I had a few unique things that came along that have probably shaped my career. One thing was, if we're all probably familiar with Title IX, which is legislation that brought equity to women's sports, and a big reason why I have this job. But I don't know how many people know this. I was part of a college team that the men's program at Miami University, where I was a player, was dropped because of Title IX back in the mid to late 90s. And that was a big one for a few reasons. One, I was the captain of the team at the time, and the head coach, a gentleman named Bobby Kramig, we fought to save our team, went to town hall meetings, met with the board of directors, and him and I became closer during that experience, went through something pretty important and emotional, and forged a bond that 10 years later, he's the one who gave me my shot in college soccer. He became the women's coach at Miami, and if I fast forward through a lot of that story, he hired me and gave me my first shot. I think it also, for a little bit of the time, took my focus off of soccer because I didn't play my senior year, and I decided to stay and finish. I had a finance economics double major, and so I went right into the business world, into an investment banking life that taught me a lot of things. One is the value of hard work, because we were working 80 to 100 hours a week. Attention to detail was incredibly important. My bosses, I was providing work for them and presentations, and they were using that work to try to win business that were billion-dollar contracts. So if something went wrong, you were held accountable in lots of different ways. Back then, they could probably get away with some stuff that you wouldn't get away with now. But it quickly taught me attention to detail in my work. You had to be organized. You had to be efficient with your time. You were part of really high-level meetings that you saw a sales pitch, so to speak, which goes to recruiting. There was a level of professionalism that hopefully we bring to this program that the average coach might not have had that young in their career. And so I think I learned a lot in my 2 years on the investment banking side. I did 4 years with a investment firm, and again, it was very fast-paced, right? You have to be part of a firm that picks stocks and winners and losers, and if it goes well, you reap the rewards, and if it goes poorly, you could lose clients, and that brings on a lot of stress, and you have to make split-second decisions that have real implications. I also spent 2 years doing community service with an organization called AmeriCorps, which when anyone ever asked me, I think that was the most impactful, powerful 2 years of my life. I met my wife on a Habitat for Humanity build. So service is built into our family, built into that Xavier program, and will be built into this KU program. But that particular program I did, you were with a group of 10 people for a year, essentially, and you had one mode of transportation, which was a 15-passenger van. You lived for 4 to 6 weeks at wherever the sponsor put you. And so we lived in church basements on cots, and we lived in a transitional housing unit in downtown San Francisco, and we had to buy groceries for that 10 group of people. We had to learn to subsist on like $5 a day per person, and the great part of that program was they intentionally brought in people from different backgrounds. And so I was just coming out of college, just coming out of the finance world, and I was in a group that had people just out of high school with their GED. And it was different socioeconomic, race, religion, background, and you had to coexist and grow together for a year. And so I did that for a year in the western part of the United States, and then I did it for a year where I was the team leader, taking those other 10 people out into the world in kind of the southeast part of the country. And that year as a team leader was probably the best training I've had for what it's like to be a head coach, and trying to bring 25, 30 people from different backgrounds and unite them under one goal and figure out all the messy stuff in between.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah. That's as well-rounded of a background as you could put together.
Yeah, just not your normal path to coaching, but like you said, it's a microcosm of coaching, because you're dealing with all different walks of life, all different scenarios, split-second decisions that will mean a lot to a lot of people. So we're ecstatic to have you here. We're so happy you joined us today. Everybody that meets you loves you. Obviously, the passion and energy comes out, and I think it's going to be great, and you deserve the support. So what was it, April 21st? It will be the first
I believe
chance
I'm not
at home?
misspeaking, but April 21st is a spring game. It's an exhibition, but we'll try to do some programming around it. We are going to get ourselves out in the community and be accessible, and we'd love if the community could come back and support us. We're putting together our fall 24 season, which should be released in the next few months, but we'll have some really high-quality, high-profile home games, and it's important to me that we make Rock Chalk Park and that facility a really tough place to play and a tough place to walk away with a win, and we want that from day one. And as much as the community could support us, we'd appreciate it.
You've only been here for a few weeks. Have you been down Fieldhouse yet for a game?
I was fortunate enough that when my family came on the trip to visit, we were at the game against UMKC. I went to the game just this past week against the University of Cincinnati, which is a place I used to work. And man, that was a battle. And so there's nothing like it. I showed up to the game. I was telling my family this. We've been to a lot of sporting events and been to a lot of college basketball games at Xavier, which has a great program. And I showed up. I'm fortunate enough I could walk through a door and be in my seats. And so I came 10 minutes before the game. And one thing I noticed is the entire concourse was completely empty, and everyone was in their seat. And I've never experienced anything quite like that, where the crowd is full and energized and ready to go 10 minutes before tip-off, and it's just
there's no fashionably late here.
Nope.
You get there early, and it's an awesome atmosphere, and something that I'm sure you will utilize in recruiting, because it's great to bring recruits into great environments, just like it is to take them down Saturdays to Kansas football when we get done with the new David Booth Memorial Stadium. So just a great camaraderie. Wayne and I talk about it all the time when we have different coaches on, and you've only been here a few months, but you'll learn, and I'm sure you already have, the camaraderie that exists in this athletic department.
Yeah, absolutely. The passion for Kansas athletics just drips out of people's pores. And whether that's the fans in the stands or the people working in this building, you can feel it, and it's different than anything I've experienced.
Well, you got two of them, and Wayne and I right here.
For sure.
We love it, and wouldn't want to be anywhere else. But thanks for joining us here on the Jayhawker Podcast. Nate Lee, brand new soccer coach here at the University of Kansas. Get out, follow kansasathletics.com, find out when that spring game will be, and get out and support and make Rock Chalk Park kind of like a little Allen Fieldhouse. So, again, Rock Chalk, appreciate your time, and wish you nothing but the best.
Rock Chalk. Thank you for having me.